Okay, hey everybody, welcome to another episode of On the Wrist from Off the Cuff. Today we have a fun little budget Timex for you guys. Now, of course, a little bit about Timex as a brand. They were originally founded back in 1854 as the Waterbury Clock Company, and then later transitioned into the U.S. Time Company around World War II before settling on the Timex Corporation name back in the 70s. Now, this particular type of watch, as you can tell, is a classic field watch. Now, some key common characteristics in design language when you're looking for that really classic aesthetic and a field watch. You're going to want, of course, a very modern vintage style size with full numerals, the 12 and or 24-hour scale, and either a black or cream dial, and even sometimes you'll catch green ones, and this particular aesthetic. Now, this particular model is the Mark 1 Steel from Timex in 40 millimeters. Now, the retail price on this is $129 list, essentially, but with sales and whatnot, you're often seeing it go for around $90. And maybe some change, and depending, of course, on shipping and whatnot, but there's also a lot of sales going on. I personally was able to secure this one, I believe, directly from Timex, if my memory serves me correctly. I finally have gotten around to reviewing it. Now, with all that said, let's go ahead, get this piece in hand, and take a closer look. So, as you can see, very, very well-known aesthetic here, guys. I mean, you think classic field watch, this is probably one of the exact layouts that you're going to think of. The diameter is 40 millimeters. You're going to have an 11.1 millimeter height, but a lot of that has to do with that beautifully domed acrylic crystal. And wow, I mean, honestly, for the price, I think the acrylic crystal on here almost is just the price of admission. Everything else is a bonus because this thing is gorgeous. Look at that. Look at the height. Look at the just play on the dial, the distortion that it adds here towards the ends. Really, really just fun, super vintage aesthetic. And then you think about the money people spend putting in time, of course, having these types of crystals put into a Hamilton or something. It's really nice to think that you can actually buy a watch under $100, very similar aesthetic, and you know, that's meant to be knocked around. It's not really meant to be a luxury piece, so why pay so much more for one that's trying to establish this look? So, you know, I think that's a really great argument for this particular piece. Now, it does have a 47 millimeter lug to lug. It's all stainless steel, and it's all matte blasted, at least on the top. As you'll see once we open this up, you'll actually notice that it does have brushing in the portions you cannot see within the clasp, on the case back, and even underneath the links themselves. It looks like they were originally brushed, and then essentially the top portions received a matte blast. Now, again, it does have this beautiful box domed acrylic. You have an unsigned, polished, non-screw down crown. You have a quartz analog movement. The case back is solid and etched. As far as the dial hands and loom go, you have printed indices with a semi matte satin black dial, no date complication here. You have painted hands, and then you have traditional loom on the hands and the hour triangles, and then you also get the Indiglo Nightlight dial. So when I push in the crown here, the dial will light up, which you probably can't tell because of the studio lights, but we'll get to this so you can get a little idea of it there. But you will get a much better idea when it comes to the low light transition. But just so you know, that is there. As far as water resistance goes, this is 30 meters of water resistance, so it's going to take a splash. It's going to be fine to wear in the rain and whatnot, but you know, I probably wouldn't want to submerge it or take it out for some water sports. As far as the strap and bracelet go, you have 20 millimeter lugs. Of course, everything at this price point is pretty much going to be hollow. You can see the hollow end links, but they are nicely fitted, and then you're going to have hollow links. You can kind of see here the center links on this 5-link style bracelet. You can get an idea of where some of that space in the hollow links are. You can, hopefully the camera can pick it up. It's a little dark in there, but essentially, yes, hollow links. Doesn't feel super tinny or anything like that. It's still pretty well constructed. And then, you know, kind of, you do have to adjust your expectations, because this is a watch that is going to sell for under $100. I mean, even at the retail price, the full list price of $129, your expectations aren't going to be super high for a watch on metal. Now, the clasp, though, is actually pretty decent because it does have a push button, and it flows really nicely, as you can see there. So fits really nice, very sleek as far as the dimensions go and everything like that. I think that's one thing that they really do well at Timex, is a lot of it is in the design. Of course, the execution is meant to be more budget oriented, but as far as design goes, this is really quite a handsome piece to look at, although not finished to super high levels or anything like that. I mean, it makes sense for a watch like this being a field watch. Now, with all that said, let's actually go ahead and get this piece on. Okay, as you can see on my 7¼ inch wrist, fits really well, like you would think for a 40mm watch. Get a little bit more arm into the picture there. You can see, proportions wise, definitely quite comfortable, quite sporty, but the dial does have a lot going on, so it does fill the space really well, and that also helps it seem visually smaller and shrunk down in appearance. And then also, because of the details in the links there, and also the fact that it's non-tapering, it does also help shrink down that watch head just a bit. Now, one thing I really like is this crystal. Again, guys, this thing is really the star of the show here. Of course, everything else is really well done as far as being quite the minimal aesthetic and whatnot, but this is really where they splurge, is on this crystal. And although it's not super clean right at this second, let me just give it a quick wipe. Sorry about that. It is quite nice. So, really nice to wear. Obviously, it's going to be lighter, although it's all steel. It's quite hollow, and then considering it's a quartz movement, it's not going to have a lot of weight, from a movement or a rotor swinging around in there. It's going to be pretty small quartz movement inside. So it's a lot of fun, and it gives you a lot of that same visual aesthetic for not very much, which I think is where its main strong suit is. And honestly, for the comparable Hamilton, you're going to be spending a lot more money, and you're probably going to be treating it exactly the same, and you're not going to be super impressed with the finishing on either of the watches. So I think that's really nice. And then, of course, the Timex brand does have some nice horological significance as well. So it's not like you're just taking some company that just straight knocked off a particular look. In this case, they actually do have some decent ties to that actual time period. So let's go ahead now and move on to the Loom Shots and low light transition. Let's go ahead and hit the lights. Now, as you can see, you're going to get the traditional loom there, so you don't have to rely on the Indiglo. But let me see if I can reach over in the darkness and not cover the dial up. But when the time comes, boom. Look at how legible that is. Now, the camera is definitely helping as far as the contrast goes. I tell you what, with my naked eye, the contrast isn't quite as sharp as you're going to be seeing on your screen right now, because there's going to be a little bit of a washout effect there. The dark, basically, on the font isn't going to be quite as dark, because the light's going to be shining through it, and it's going to make your eyes have to adjust a bit. But this is super helpful. I mean, you see technology like this, and you're just like, why hasn't anyone done this, figured out? And you can actually see that the loom is fading, and basically now the camera doesn't want to focus on this dial anymore. Let me see if I can get it to focus. There we go. So actually, let me get my low light now so we can get an idea of what this is going to look like. I mean, obviously, there's not much to see in the way of this bracelet and the finishing, because it's bead blasted, but it might give you a better idea of the color, because I know sometimes things can come across a lot brighter and lighter under that, that direct studio light or direct sunlight. So here you're going to get an idea of maybe some of the deeper tones and you know, different color palettes that are actually going to be in here. So although I'd say under the Bright Studio lights they come across as being a very bright gray, you're definitely going to get a couple of undertones of maybe some bronze when you have it in a low light situation there. And you're going to see of course that dial is always going to be black, of course, unless you hit the Indiglo, which there, it's nice. You can see pretty cool effect there. So very nice. Camera's having a little bit of trouble focusing on it, but I think it's very, very cool, guys, especially for the price. Now, am I a huge quartz fan? No, absolutely not. But, you know, I do find that quartz does have its place in collections. The nice thing is it's a grab and go type of movement. So you don't have to stop and set the watch. You don't have to do it. I mean, you just, you know, pay attention to daylight savings time, and every couple weeks maybe check on the seconds hand and make sure that everything is good, because you will get some deviation. Although it's a quartz watch and it's still quite accurate, at the end of the day this isn't some super high accuracy quartz watch where you're going to be getting you know, plus or minus 10 seconds a year. It's going to be closer to plus or minus 10 seconds a month, right? So at the end of the day, for what it is and what it's meant to do, this does a lot. It gives you the look, it gives you the style, the aesthetic. It even gives you some of the heritage. It also even gives you a very honest representation of what something like this would have been like. I mean, obviously, probably sans the Indiglo, if you were to buy it back in the 70s. So I think it's a really great piece. I'm really happy to share some more affordable pieces with you guys. On the wrist, very classic proportions, very clean, purposeful aesthetic, and then it definitely has a very clear vintage style to it. So it's not something that's going to look super modern. It's not, you're not going to confuse this with a Damasco by any means. As far as model variants go, there are actually a few other options with fabric straps, but this is the only one that's on bracelet. And then as far as steel goes, there's also other Mark 1 models that are different materials as well. I think there's some aluminum ones that are coated, which are actually really cool. They come on a bunch of different types of straps. Now, as far as comparable models go, there's really not a lot out there at the same price point. There are a lot of other field watches, and I'd say between Seiko mods and entry-level Hamiltons, those are pretty much going to be the king as far as that really, really low $300 and under space there. I mean, in Seiko 5s, of course, there's a couple of field-oriented models, maybe a little more flight-oriented. But as far as something in about at $100 and everything that's going to offer you, this is a pretty good deal. And you know what? It's Timex is a cool brand. It's an American brand. It's been around for a really long time, and people recognize it. And brand recognition is definitely part of many people's, you know, luxury experience. Although this isn't a luxury timepiece, you do get some brand recognition there, so people kind of understand, oh, that's a Timex, which, you know, for some people plays a lot into kind of their reasoning for buying one watch over another watch. So it's definitely worth mentioning that the Timex label and the brand is something that is still quite strong today and has become quite fashionable. As you know, probably, you know, you go to Todd Snyder's website, I mean, gosh, the clothes there are so expensive, but then they sell watches like this, right? So that really tells you a lot, I guess, about the stylistic nature of these watches currently. Now, the bottom line is this thing absolutely nails the vintage military aesthetic, the design, the finish, the crystal, everything really comes together just about perfectly. So you know what, guys, let me know what you think in the comments below. If you did like the video, please do hit like, and if you haven't already, please subscribe for more content just like this. Thanks, guys.